Qatar. We know the players who won't be going
Not
to
Tyrone
Qatar
Mings.
either. This is how things are looking at the moment from Gareth Southgate and the players that are going. No Reece James, no Ward-Prowse, no Tomori. A couple of things to talk about here, and I know, James, you've spoken to Gareth Southgate. There's an article from you on ESPN.com. What is the feeling back home about this squad? Are the fans happy with his decisions or not?
I think they are, mainly because there were two sort of popular names here that were doubts, and they are James Maddison and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I think in the Alexander-Arnold case, the fact that Reece James has been struggling with a knee injury, there's been a regular dialogue between the Chelsea doctors and the England medical staff, and they've taken the view that he wasn't going to be available until the knockout rounds. That then made it really much harder to justify giving a place to Reece James. So almost by extension, Trent Alexander-Arnold's place was secure just by that injury. Maddison's the one really, though, that's going to grab the headlines, because the clamour for him to be involved has been huge for a long time. He had one cap in November 2019. He's not been picked since, so we're talking 3 years in the wilderness. And out of nowhere, he suddenly made the 26th for the World Cup. Now, on form, it makes perfect sense. He's got, I think it's 22 goal involvements in the Premier League in the calendar year, and there's only 3 players from any country in England who've done more than that in that time. So he's been incredibly consistent, and a Leicester team that has had its ups and downs in that period, remember. But it's really not like Gareth Southgate to sort of bring a player in out of the cold and suddenly throw him in. But that's what he's done with Maddison, and I think he's recognised that Maddison just offers something a little bit different. I think he's probably got his place over someone like Jarrod Bowen, and he'll look at Jarrod Bowen and think, well, OK, someone who's got pace, who's direct, who can really take a player on. We've got a lot of those already. We've got players like Mason Mount, Bukayo Saka. I think he looks at Maddison and thinks, yeah, he's someone who can just find pockets of space, you know, can score goals from long range, just offer something a bit different off the bench. And that, I think, could be the role that he begins with. If he grows into the tournament, he could play a bigger role still.
So now that we know who is going, James, we've asked you to put together a possible starting 11 for the Three Lions, and it looks like this. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, he's been pretty consistent in his system for a while. It's going to be 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1, a sort of variation thereof. And I think the only real doubts here, to be honest, are Kyle Walker, because he's coming back from an injury, although all the sort of talk around him is that he's much further progressed than many had hoped for. He's really done very well in his recovery. So he may not start the first game, but certainly if he's fit enough, he will. I think John Stones, when you want a team to play out from the back, I think he's really important in that position. If you think about all 3 group games, England are going to probably dominate the ball in all 3, and so they're going to want a defender who can step out into midfield and really start to get the ball forward and give the attacking players space in which to go and play. Harry Maguire, a lot of talk about him. He's probably benefited from Rafa Varane's injury a little bit, because it's meant he's got a little bit more game time. He obviously played against Villa tonight. So I think that back 3 is set. Jude Bellingham is really exciting in the centre of midfield. I think he's played his way in for the last 2 or 3 camps. He's really started to be a dynamic presence in central midfield. And I suppose up front, Harry Kane picks himself, and then it's 2 of 3 either side. Raheem Sterling's not been in great form for Chelsea for quite some time, but he's been an absolutely pivotal player for England. He was one of the best players England had in that run to the Euro final last year. And so I think he will get the nod on that sort of trust that he's earned with Gareth Southgate over a long period of time. And then I think Phil Foden probably just about edges out Saka and Mount in that other position, because of just how good he's been for Manchester City.
Frank Leboeuf, are you afraid of this England team?
I respect that England team with all matters, but well, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm concerned defensively. As James said, Walker just comes back from injury, so what's going to be his level of form, I don't know. Maguire on the left side of the defense with Shaw on the left side. If you have some paceful players, they're going to be in trouble. Of course, there is qualities, talents for sure, but comparing to Brazil, to Argentina, to France, to maybe other teams, they're not, for me, the contender for the World Cup. They have talent, but I would be surprised if they go to the final.
It's interesting as well, James, when you look at the players who have missed out, and you were talking about form with Maddison. Tammy Abraham's form has been used as an excuse from Gareth Southgate as to why he's not in there, saying he's lost his form at the wrong time. And then you've mentioned players like Maguire who's in. I know there's been some upset from some parts that Fikayo Tomori hasn't made it. What is the feeling with Southgate's decisions in that aspect?
Well, he clearly doesn't rate Italian football very much right now, does he? I think Fikayo Tomori is very unlucky. A pivotal part of a Serie A, the Milan side that's won its first Serie A in 11 years. A really solid defender. And to borrow the phrase you were using earlier, Kate, you know, England's defending's been a bit minging. It really has for quite a long time. And Tomori was someone who you thought, particularly when Maguire was struggling, you thought this is a real chance for Tomori to come in and play here. So I think he's unlucky. I think Gareth Southgate's probably fair enough to say that Tammy Abraham, you know, 4 goals this season in all competitions, that's probably not enough of a return that he'd want to see from a backup striker for Harry Kane. So I think that one, I mean, I have to say I did think Tammy Abraham would go, but I can understand the reasoning with that a little bit more than Tomori, because I just think Tomori's been so solid and so consistent at such a high level for a long time. But I think it was, the writing may have been on the wall for him to some extent when he didn't play against Italy, in the San Siro. You're sort of thinking what a chance this would have been for Tomori, effectively a home game for him, playing for England. And when he didn't get the nod in that light, I suppose that you started to think that he's probably run out of time here.
For so many years, Shaka, we used to hear that more England players need to go abroad. And yes, we've seen Jude Bellingham in this squad announcement. But as we're just talking about, there's 2 players there playing in the Serie A that haven't made it this time around. There's a feeling from some now that maybe if you go abroad, you're not going to be picked by Gareth Southgate, and he is too Premier League biased.
It's really hard to explain, as James is pointing out, especially in the case of Tomori. Now, Gareth Southgate has shown that he will show faith with players who've done well by him. He doesn't waver an awful lot, regardless of club form. But to have Maguire in a squad, and I harping on the phrase, despite club form, a player who's barely featured for Manchester United of late, to overlook Tomori for Maguire makes absolutely no sense to me. So on the one hand, while I can applaud Gareth Southgate for the way he shows faith with those who performed for him in the past, this just doesn't make any kind of sense. And I can't dismiss it as simply, well, he's playing in the wrong league, or if he were doing exactly as he's doing for Milan at some club in the Premier League, then definitely he would have gotten the nod. No, I really am struggling to understand or explain this.
James Olley's 11 didn't really change from the 2020 Euro final. Is that a worry for England?
When I look at Harry Maguire, and this is a name that I think is very divisive and has been very divisive for a while, my issue is he has now crossed over to an area in which when something goes wrong, it seems to be Harry Maguire's fault. And that's with club and country. That's the sort of level of play that we have seen from Harry Maguire lately. And lately feels like it's been for the last 6 months, for the last year or so. And there have been many opportunities for him to turn that around. And instead of turning that around, he seems to be going deeper and deeper into an area where there is no confidence. And while we may see some positive signs because he's getting an opportunity to play, let's not forget it, he's getting an opportunity to play because somebody else got injured. I think and I worry that there are vulnerabilities there. There are some deep, deep cuts that are still there. And they're just right there on the surface. And if there were to be a mistake or a big moment in the World Cup, the collapse will be there once again from Harry Maguire because he hasn't given signs that he has turned things around with any sort of consistency. So that name right there worries me. It worries me also the attacking half of England. We look at Raheem Sterling and say, and we said at the time, the move to Chelsea will be a good thing for him. It'll be a fresh start. It'll be something that would allow him to re-energize his career. It hasn't happened. So if it's not Raheem Sterling, who gives the change of pace in that final third, playing off the shoulder of Harry Kane? I understand Phil Foden, he's been great. But Raheem Sterling is a name that, while he may be a big name, has not been a productive name.
But they are fourth favourites going into the tournament. And James, let's remember, semi-finalists in the 2018 World Cup. They went to the final of Euro 2020. Can they go all the way this time?
I mean, I don't want to sit here and say no, but I do struggle to see it because I just don't think they defend well enough. And they've not measurably improved since that European Championship final last year. And they benefited from a good run. You know, they had kind draws in 2018 and at the Euros. And I don't want to belittle the achievements that Gareth Southgate has made, because I think he's solved a lot of the habitual problems that England have about the weight of the shirt and not being able to express themselves, and you know, really being able to peak in the latter stages of tournaments. And they hadn't won a knockout game for 10 years before he took charge. So, you know, he has made real serious steps forward there. But, you know, when I look at the way that England have been playing of late, and you look at the possible pathway to even a quarter-final this time, I mean, assuming that they get out of the group, they're going to play one of the Netherlands, Ecuador or Senegal. None of those are easy games. And then assuming that things go to form, it would be potentially France or Argentina in the quarterfinals. And I haven't seen enough from England for the last year or so to think that they're playing well enough to just keep teams like that out. The defending is an issue. It is a major problem. Maguire or no Maguire, they don't keep clean sheets. And actually, they struggle to score goals from open play. You know, Harry Kane hasn't got an England goal from open play for more than a year. So there are issues there that need to be resolved. The hope is that Southgate can come up with the kind of tricks and the inspiration and really get England firing at the right time, because he's got a pedigree for that, to be fair. He's got a track record of getting England to peak when they need to. It looks a taller order than it has done in the past, but the component parts are there, particularly in midfield. I think Bellingham is such a huge improvement there. He gives them some real energy, some real dynamism going forward. There are the attacking options, but as I say, you don't win anything if you don't keep clean sheets, and that's going to be England's problem.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.